This is The Resilient Life, where we believe that every human will struggle in this life. Our challenge is to struggle well. I'm Ryan Manion. I lost my brother to war, my mom to cancer, and I'm the daughter of a retired Marine. I'm also a wife, mom, author, and president of one of the nation's leading veteran service organizations. Join me and some incredible guests as we explore the value of struggling well through life's inevitable challenges. All right, welcome to another episode of the Resilient Life podcast. Super excited for today's guest, Philip Krim, the co-founder and CEO of Casper. A little bit about Philip. As the CEO and co-founder of Casper, Philip Krim leads the company's comprehensive business strategy, expansion, and vision for the future. In 2014, after recognizing that working professionals were placing an increased value on health and fitness, but neglecting sleep, Krim helped to create the company with the goal of reimagining the sleep industry. Driven by a direct-to-consumer model, Casper netted $1 million in its first 28 days. A serial entrepreneur, Philip has founded two previous startups where he focused on evolving consumer and e-commerce trends. He launched his very first business out of his dorm room at the University of Texas, Austin, where he earned his bachelor's in marketing. And perhaps the most fascinating and important thing to his bio is Philip also serves on the board of directors at the Travis Manion Foundation. We are so happy to have Philip here today to talk a little bit more about his journey, entrepreneurship, and what it means to dive out there and start your own business, which is so fascinating to me. So welcome, Philip. Great to have you on.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. And as I was sharing with you, I think this is an important episode because I shared with you a little bit before. There is a tremendous, I see, hunger and appetite, especially for our military community, for veterans that are transitioning out of active duty, to kind of take that next step and do something on their own, start their own business. And I think a lot of them just have that entrepreneurial spirit. And so I'm excited to talk to you today about that path for you. And I think that our audience is going to respond to it as well. So let's talk about entrepreneurship. I mean, you clearly have a history of that, and not just in your own right, but from your parents too. It was something I think that was taught to you at a young age. How was that? What did they do for you? And what did your parents do?
Yeah, it's I'm happy to hear that you think the audience will respond well to entrepreneurship, because I think that makes total sense to me. Like, to me, one of the top qualities or traits when it comes to entrepreneurship that you need is just a bias towards action. And I think that's something that certainly if you're serving our country, you likely have that. And I think it's just something that you need kind of to be innate to you if you're going to have the entrepreneurial itch and if you're going to go down that path. And it's something that I definitely witnessed firsthand growing up with my family and my dad in particular. He had that entrepreneurial itch. When he was growing up, he started working on fishing boats out of Sheepshead Bay in Brooklyn, New York, and eventually had his own and ran a couple of them. And again, it was just that kind of bias for action about always seeing what could come next and then running after that. And I think that's what's so exciting to me. And my dad had been in a number of different businesses, but the commonality is just, seeing an opportunity, seeing something that you think could be fun, could be challenging, could be educational, and just biasing towards leaning in and leaning forward towards that, and then just trying to figure it out. And I think that's the other thing that I think commonalities between the different things that I saw my parents do, the different things that I've done is just there's no playbook for this. There's no recipe to how to go build a company that you want to build. And instead, you just have to be comfortable in the uncomfortable and commit to figuring it out, and taking one step at a time, but having a view on where you want to go so that you're heading in the right direction. And to me, that's fun. It's daunting, it's scary, and it's scarier at different moments of time than others. But I think that's also what makes kind of going and creating your own journey so much fun, and why why I have enjoyed an entrepreneurial journey so much.
I love that bias for action. And I think that's so true. You know, I have such tremendous respect for individuals that come up with an idea, no matter how big or small it is, and just run towards it. You know, and I think that's the biggest thing, you know, in terms of being an entrepreneur, is like anyone can come up with the idea, but you know, it really takes a certain type of person to action off of it, to say, okay, we talk about it a lot at work. You know, we talk about, all right, there's too many ideas. Who's going to actually get it done, right? Like, let's stop talking ideas and let's start doing the hard work it takes to make this happen. So,
yeah, I think that's such a good point. And we joke that like ideas are the easy part. It's the doing that's the hard part. And sometimes it's too many good ideas get in the way, and you want to try to go run after so many different opportunities. And I'm sure you guys see this within your organization, and we see it all the time. And that's where, you know, you have to take the less fun hat on and say like, no, we can't go after these 10 good ideas. We need to pick the 2 best ideas that are really going to be impactful. What are those 2? And then only focus on those. And I think that's, you know, that's just always the challenge is what can we really act on that's going to be impactful, that we know we can build from. But the idea part is the fun part. It's the easy part. It's what we all get excited about, but it's actually rolling up your sleeves, getting your hands dirty to go build or do or create something that is the tougher part. And that's where you see, you know, great founding teams and great managers and great executives, I think really kind of separate themselves as folks who can really drive that action around the ideas that you know, we know will make the biggest impact.
yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about your first company. You're in your dorm room at the University of Texas at Austin, and you form the Merit Group in January of 2003, correct?
Yes, although I think it's funny. It's like whenever you read about someone's background, it always seems so orderly and specific, and this thing led to this thing, and you woke up and did this. And so, you know, it's not like I had this epiphany and one day woke up and formed this company to go work on it. It was more of I didn't want to get a traditional summer job, and so I had to figure out a way to make money. And I put myself through college and was lucky to have some scholarships there, but still wanted to kind of avoid the traditional summer route. And so this was early 2000s. I was reading a lot about the internet and e-commerce, and obviously using it in school, and realized something called drop shipping, and that if I could figure out how to take an order online and generate the demand for the e-commerce site, that someone else could do the fulfillment and I would never have to physically touch the goods. And so I found some drop shippers throughout the country. I called them up and tried to hide the fact that I was a college student, and said, you know, I'm going to build a website and sell some of your products on it. If you can do the fulfillment, you know, I'll handle the, you know, customers and everything on the sales and service side. And I started tinkering around with building websites. So I taught myself HTML and I built these websites, and figured out what it wasn't. This was before Google, so there were, you know, different ways to advertise online, and just started trying different things, and some of them worked out pretty well. And so I was able to generate some sales, get the orders placed, handle the customers, and that's when I first learned about, you know, customer service and sales and dealing with end consumers and how to sell things. And so it was really fun. And fortunately, it worked out well enough where I could build a company around it. And so that was my focus while I was in school and for a few years afterwards.
So you're running this business that you essentially started because you didn't want to take a traditional summer job, and it becomes a little bit successful, and you keep it going throughout the rest of your college, your time in school. And do you graduate from college thinking like, I mean, I know what I'm doing. I founded the Merit Group. This is my business and I'm going to just grow it. Like, is that the intent, or are you already thinking like, what's next?
You know, I'm trying to think. I don't know exactly what I was thinking at the time. I knew there were a few constraints. I knew my parents were certain that I needed to get a degree, and they were right. And so I ended up going the 5-year route in college to make sure I did get the degree while I was working full time as well. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I moved back. This was in Austin. I moved to Houston for another year. I knew that I didn't want to be in Houston forever. So I then moved to New York. And with New York, I, decided to look for other opportunities. And that's where I just started kind of spending more time in the venture and entrepreneurial community within New York to learn what was going on and learn about different startups and, how people were investing in startups. So I guess I always like to make sure that I'm being challenged and learning. And so I knew that I was going to go on to kind of keep pushing myself to do something else. And I also knew that, with that business, it felt like it was getting harder and harder and not easier and easier. And so those are lessons that I've carried to today, that you can't be complacent, and something that works one day doesn't mean that it's going to work the next day. And in this business in particular, online advertising was getting more and more expensive. So the business was getting harder and not easier. And so, I was always open-minded about what could happen and where to go and how to keep learning and try new things. And I think that's also part of being an entrepreneur is, companies aren't the same company that you start and then that scale and then grow over time. You have to constantly reinvent yourself. And, even with my most recent company, Casper, there's very palpable different kind of chapters of the business that feel different, that require a different focus, require a different skill set to be successful in. And the same thing is I think about like my personal kind of entrepreneurial journey. Like there were definitely highs and lows and things that worked and didn't work. And, I was lucky to get my family involved in the first business so that I could also have the time to graduate school, but that also poses its own set of challenges. And so, it's a constant learning. And again, it all looks pretty when you read about it or look back, but it definitely wasn't in the time. And, those are things that I think make you smarter and more experienced down the road. And so, that journey takes you down a specific path and can't look back other than to learn from it and hopefully not make the same mistakes twice.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about Casper a little bit. And I'll never forget, there was something the first time I met you, went to your office in New York, and we're talking about Casper, and I was very familiar with the company. I actually owned a Casper mattress before I even knew who you were. And I sat down and I remember asking you something like, so you started this mattress. I said mattress company and you said sleep company. And I'm like, okay. And then another thing you said to me that I found so interesting is you talked about how you tried to find an industry that you could disrupt. And you were talking about, and it made so much sense to me, the mattress industry. Before you came around, you would literally have to go into a Sleepy's or a department store and buy a mattress and lie down on the mattress and decide which mattress you wanted. And you've revolutionized this industry where you can now go online, pick your mattress out, and it's delivered in a box. And I love the fact that, you kind of said to me, it was not so much the product, but what industry could I disrupt that there was a need for? And you talked a lot about like the health and wellness aspect. And that's so huge and it's so important, but nobody was putting this emphasis on sleep. It was like eating better, taking better care of yourself with physical fitness, but sleep is by far the most important component. That's changed. I mean, I think people have evolved to know how important sleep is. And it is a part of when you talk about your physical well-being that's being talked about. But I think you had a big part to do with that. And when you talk about your company, walk us back, number one, through the beginning of Casper, like the beginning phases, how you decide I'm going to send mattresses out in a box. Because I don't know, what was it? 8 years ago, or when you founded the company, 2014, give or take, right? Around there?
We started working on it 2013. And,
okay.
There were some things that there's always like an element of kind of serendipity on why things like come together. And so back in 2013, I'm one of 5 co-founders in the business. And again, this is just trying to take lessons learned in the past and applying to the future. So I had done the solo founder thing. For some people that's right. And I learned a lot doing that, but I knew that I wanted to do something where I'd work with some really smart other people, day one to really build something. And the other thing that I learned just in reading more about, other great companies and founders was, the truly inspired businesses start with a really big vision and then kind of execute that one day at a time, but they always remember kind of the North Star on why they did it. And I think that's important because, things get tough, things get challenging. And if you have that North Star in the beginning, then it just helps you remember why you wanted to start the business, why you wanted to do what you're doing. And so for us, first and foremost, it was definitely that I just wanted to work with these four other guys. They were incredibly smart. They all had a different kind of angle on why they got excited by the idea of Casper. And it was that the conversations around the idea that I think got us all excited, but also clarified what we wanted to do. So, my co-founder, Neil, his dad's a sleep doctor. So he knew things about sleep that I never knew. And so that was amazing. One of my co-founders, Jeff, who's our product designer, he had worked at IDEO for years and he had studied sleep and ergonomics. And so he knew why some of the designs in the mattress space existed, but had nothing to do with getting the best night of sleep possible. And so we just said, like, there's no brand that stands for a better night of sleep. And there's no brand that kind of connects those dots. And we said, like, if you want to go sleep better, what store do you go to? And you have to think about it. Whereas if I said, you need to go run faster, you're going to go check out Nike or Adidas. Or if I said, you should eat better, you're going to go, Whole Foods and start to think about the quality of your foods. But if I said you need to sleep better, there's no brand that you trust. There's no brand kind of helping you learn about how to get a better night of sleep. And that's what we said we wanted to create. And we just started with like a simple premise that we didn't want to play the games that were prevalent in the industry. We didn't want to trick consumers to buying our products. We just wanted to have an authentic connection with them. And so that's where the conversation started back in 2013. And then we said, well, if we're going to do this, what's the most important aspect? And a mattress, it turns out, is literally and figuratively foundational to a good night of sleep. And also probably the biggest and most broken part of any product that touches sleep. And so let's go figure out how to make the mattress buying experience better. But we had, even with day one, like, focus on the mattress, but then let's go out from there. And how do we help people with better pillows and better sheets and, better lighting products and content and everything that could help you sleep better. And so that's where we've started to play in over the last 6.5 years. But it still feels like we're just getting going. Like we really do want to build that long-term generational brand and business that defines it. And we still talk to this day, like, when Phil Knight started Nike, it wasn't normal to wake up and go for a run in the morning. Like that was a cultural change that his company and his vision helped catalyze and accelerate. And like that's kind of what we want to do. And when we started Casper, people were just starting to track their sleep. So Fitbits and Jawbones were just becoming a thing. We also said, like, it was no longer the cultural cool thing to do about bragging about pulling all-nighters like we did in college. It was the opposite. It's like, you know what? I'm going to stop working because I'm going to get a better night of sleep, and that's going to help me be more creative or smarter, whatever it is. And those are the themes that we want to help perpetuate and accelerate.
So you start Casper, and you guys net $1 million in the first 28 days. When that happens, is it an epiphany where you're like, we're onto something? I mean, do you automatically know that this is something? Because you talk about the Mare Company, it was like a slow roll. You really had to push, and you see almost this overnight success. What does that do for you? And what were some of the biggest lessons that you learned from that and in the first 2 years following that?
It's funny. We talk about like a bias for action as one quality. Another quality that I think is important is paranoia. It's always like, what can go wrong next?
Right.
And, you're watching the website as the orders come in, and that's like really exciting. And then you're like, like, how are we going to fill these orders? How are we going to like do right by these customers, and where are these orders coming from? And how do we replicate that? And so, I don't know, my bias was just like immediately all the things that could go wrong. And this is another one where you just kind of have to handle what's thrown at you. And we were delayed on shipping, 6 weeks in our earliest days. But fortunately, we had customers that were like really empathetic, and they were really there to support the brand, and they knew we were a startup, and we apologized, and we were transparent about everything. And one of my co-founders had the brilliant idea, like, let's send them an aero bed so that if they need something to sleep on, we'll just buy it on Amazon and send it to them. And that worked until Amazon shut us down because they thought we were reselling it, which we weren't. But we just tried to like creatively problem solve things that popped up. And we knew that if customers turned on us, it was over. And that was the most important thing to us. So, as exciting as watching the register ring, I would say like no one said like, oh, we're on to something huge here. We were all just saying like, how do we not mess this up? Because it seems like it could be special, but there's so many things that could go wrong. And so we had to go, convince our manufacturers to sell to us and give us more capacity. And that was tough. And we had to make sure we were shipping and making sure the technology worked just to communicate with customers. And so it's really just, again, kind of putting one foot in front of the other to make sure it doesn't fall apart. And, some days it still feels like we're doing that. So it's always a challenge, that's for sure.
Yeah. And, one of the things that I love that you guys have done is that I love the partnerships with other companies. I love that you can go on, and I'm trying to think of, because it was actually how I found out about Casper, and the furniture company itself is blanking on me, but I went to buy a bed.
West Elm.
Oh, it was West Elm. That's what it is. So I went on to West Elm to buy a bed, and it was like, add on. Well, do you want a mattress? Here's Casper mattresses. And I'm like, what is this? And I thought, what a great business model. Like, what a great way to have people learn about your company. And I think you guys have, since then, you've latched on to other businesses too with that same model, correct? I think it's Raymore Flanagan you were in. And because I was just in there the other day helping my aunt and uncle pick out furniture, and they were like, what mattresses should we get? And I'm like, Casper mattresses. And there you were, right there, Raymore Flanagan. So, but I love that. I love, again, that collaboration with other businesses to help drive the attention to what you guys were doing. And when do you get to the point where you start coming up with these ideas for how you branch out? And I imagine that it's constant development, and you're constantly thinking of new things to generate more awareness and drive more consumers to the business.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we're always thinking about. And looking back, I think one of the things we always thought very deeply about was just the power of the brand, and how do we develop a brand that really punches above its weight class relative to the, age and size of our business. So, the fact that we were able to partner with one of the country's biggest furniture retailers, West Elm, when we were, I think, 1 or 2 years old, not even 2 years old, was amazing. And they loved the brand. They loved what we stood for. And we did an amazing business with them. Like we I think doubled or tripled their mattress business fairly quickly just by promoting, a brand that is strong with sleep, with bed frames that they're already selling a ton of. And so they were super excited, and it was a great partnership. And then I think we might not have even been 3 years old, but maybe it's 3 years old. And we were able to partner with American Airlines to provide sleep products for all business and first class seats on domestic flights. This is, the country's largest airline chose, a small company, at the time, Casper, 3 years old, not even, to partner with to re-outfit all of their first class seats with sleep products. And so it was just mind blowing, and it helped us build awareness. And we were super flattered and fortunate that they saw the potential.
So I'd love to know, because I always talk about, even us as a veteran service organization, we've grown exponentially over the past 13 years. And we always talk about this idea, like, are we legitimate enough to be able to walk into that room and sell the work that we do, the impact we're having? How do you, as a small startup, get in front of American Airlines and have them believe in your product? Because I think that's fascinating. And I think to some degree, that's what separates success from non-success. Like the idea that you are confident enough that you're going to get in front, not only that you're going to do it, but how do you do that? How do you go through that process?
Yeah. The funny thing is, like, now that I've seen it happen a few times, it just takes two people connecting on it, which, if you've done the work or you have the right kind of setup, you'll get in the room, and then it takes, an executive sponsor to really see the potential, and then it happens, even at giant organizations. So I think it comes down to, how you connect with people, and with the Travis Manion Foundation, such an amazing cause. It has such a wonderful group of people behind it and running it. It's a really compelling story. And so that's where brands or foundations or businesses can really, going back to the phrase I used earlier, like punch above its weight class and partner with giant organizations, because there's something really there. There's an authentic truth. There's an authentic kind of connection there that's emotional, that connects with people and consumers. And so I think that's where, going back to having the big vision around building the world's first sleep brand, American Airlines could pick anyone, but they liked our vision. They liked what we stood for. They realized that the brand was authentic, that their consumers would see it and understand it and connect with it. And so, once you have that foundation, it's pretty amazing what you can go out and do and who you can connect with, and find other people who want to support you, because, at the end of the day, there's not that many things like that really connect with consumers on that emotional level, or connect with, whoever your target audience is. And I think people are looking for more and more of that. And that's why brands matter. And that's why brands stand out and do well over time, because they develop that relationship. They think long-term about who they're talking to and how they're talking to them. It's not transactional. It's not, about the business case first. It's about, standing for something more. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of emerging brands really break through industries that have been dominated by, old stodgy competitors for a long time. And that's certainly the case in our category. We compete against the S brands, Simmons, Serta, Sealy. Everyone knows them, but they don't stand for anything. And I think that's why they're going to lose share over time. They don't mean anything to customers. And for us, we always said we want to stand for that best night of sleep possible. And as long as we do right by our customers around that and keep that authenticity, I think the brand will do well. And that means other great brands will want to partner with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the idea of how important, and we talk about this all the time at Travis Manion Foundation, the importance of relationships is second to none, 100%. And being able to have authentic conversations about not just what we do and what we're trying to accomplish as an organization, but more about who we are as an organization. And so I think that is the most important ingredient to any successful business organization. Absolutely. I want to talk about you a little bit. So you're one of the youngest CEOs, and Fortune named you number 28 on its list of 40 under 40. As of 2018, Casper had an annual revenue of $400 million. What factor have you found your age to play in all of this? Has it been a challenge or an advantage, and why?
Oh, good question. I think it's been both. And I say that like, I fully appreciate that with age comes experience and wisdom. And I see that. I mean, you're just always smarter because you've lived through more things and you've seen more things. And you've gotten to, for me, it's surrounding myself with other people who have been there and done that and are super smart, and they help me get smarter faster. But you're always learning. And so I definitely understand the limitations of being young and not seeing how things play out. But at the same time, I think there's a natural thing that comes with kind of youth of questioning the status quo, questioning the way things are, and challenging them to be better. And hopefully I don't lose that as I get older, and hopefully that's more of a personality thing. But I think, you're less likely to be, entrenched in your old ways of doing things, and more likely to just challenge the way things are done. And so I think that's important if you're trying to build something that's different, or, chart your own course, is just continuing to challenge the status quo. So I think, hopefully hopefully I'll remember both those things and realize, there are people that are a lot more experienced out there than me, and I can learn from them and have kind of the ability to ask the right questions and stay humble about what I could learn. But at the same time, like, challenge things and, push the boundaries and see where we can do things different when they make more sense.
Let's talk about what happens right as the pandemic is hitting. Casper is going public in the midst of financial turmoil within the country. I mean, I guess turmoil with everything. You're going public. And when you went public, you were criticized a little bit. It wasn't this, real fresh, here it is. It was, you were compared, I saw some comparisons to like Uber and Lyft and WeWork. And I listened to you the morning you went public. And I think it was Jim Cramer, who's not easy. And he was, really challenging some of the things that, about the company. And you were so inspiring in your answer. And just, again, the vision that you had and the way you talked about the company. If I didn't know you, I would have been like, I believe in this company because this guy's running it. And so talk to us about leading up to that point in the middle of like one of the greatest challenges our country has seen, and you're going public at the same time.
Yeah, it's a little bit of criticism is a slight understatement. We were the first kind of money losing startup on the consumer side since WeWork, and the press had a frenzy on WeWork, and we knew that there was risk that they would kind of point their attention to us, and that's exactly what happened. And so we ended up going public on February 6th, and that was after months of just really negative press and sentiment around our business. The press focuses on certain things at certain moments in time. We, from my perspective, we were not even a 6-year-old business, and we were investing in the infrastructure of our business in order to allow us to continue to scale and build the vision that we talked about. So it was the right thing for us to be investing into the business. But the press saw what happened with WeWork, and they just jumped all over us. And when you're going public, you're in a quiet period. So you cannot respond to the press. You cannot answer any questions. And so the narratives just build on themselves. So it led to a very tough IPO, and people jumped on the bandwagon like Jim Cramer and others, and that's fine. It's just kind of the market forces doing what they do. And people are always skeptical. Whenever you're challenging the way something is done, there's a lot of skepticism. And that skepticism existed when we raised our first dollar of investment, and we heard, no, that's a dumb idea. No, it's never going to work. And, you're crazy to think you can build a cool mattress brand, et cetera. And that skepticism played out right into our IPO. Fast forward, we were the last consumer IPO, I think, that went on a physical roadshow, because right after we went public, the pandemic hit, and immediately markets started getting very choppy and sold off and started to crater. And all of a sudden, no one cared about Casper. We were everyone's least problem. But it was just tough because, the whole world was, no one knew. The whole world was afraid of what was going to happen. And so it was a very challenging period for the company, and not because of the stock price, just because, we have employees, we have customers, and people didn't know what to do. We didn't know how it was going to impact our business. And so we decided to make some really decisive actions because we thought it was going to be a really tough period for the business. So we decided to shut down our European business, which we had been investing in for a number of years. We decided to pull back on a number of projects, and we thought that, the pandemic was going to be really bad for business. It turned out it wasn't. And we've done well because people are investing in sleep. People are investing in their home. People do want to get a better night of sleep and feel as good as possible waking up and be as healthy as possible. So we've actually been, I think, a beneficiary, fortunately, but it's still a really traumatic time. And I think that's when, we all look to, the leaders of the companies we work for, or the leaders of, government, et cetera, to help us get through those uncertain times. I learned what it meant having a stock price that was subject to, everyone's fears and concerns every day, and we continue to live through that. So that's a new chapter for me personally. When you're a private company, you're not subject to that day in and day out. So it's a different dynamic, but it's again, like, skepticism is something we are very used to as a company. And, as founders, people are always going to challenge what you see and what you think should happen. And over time, things should take care of themselves. And I think that's what I tell people about our stock price. And it's what I tell them about our business and what we want to go build. And so we still very much focus on the original mission. And we talk a lot about how we can awaken the potential of a well-rested world. And we just need to keep going and doing and executing our strategy. And over time, that will allow us to be, the world's first sleep brand. It'll allow us to impact millions of people by helping them get a better night of sleep. And we just can't lose focus of that throughout the day-to-day noise that happens when you're in the spotlight.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that you said was so fascinating. And it's actually something that I think a lot of people are challenged with. And I think it speaks back to really what you said in the beginning, that bias for action, having that entrepreneurial spirit. You said since the first dollar that has been invested in this company, we've had naysayers. We've had people who've said this isn't going to work. And, I'd argue that a lot of people, probably I would say myself included, I have some very trusted mentors in my life, and I will go to them with ideas, both personally and professionally about things. And, if I'm hearing no too many times, even if I truly believe in it, I'm more apt to be like, all right, you know what, that's probably not going to work. And I think there's something unique about people who, no matter what, drive forward. And, they can take this idea and have so much belief in their vision and themselves that they tune out all the other noise. And I'd like to know if you feel like that's how it was for you with Casper, if you feel like that's how it is for you, how you operate in general, and how do you get to that place? How do you get to that place to have enough belief in yourself that no matter what, and not only that, this is a two-part question. How do you get to that point? And how do you also know how to gauge who you should be listening to and who you shouldn't be listening to? Does that make sense?
Totally. And I think the answer to both those questions has to do with like how you form personal convictions. Because there are people that I listen to that would help me form high convictions, even if a lot of other people are saying no. And then, there are other people where their input just, it doesn't stick that much with me. So it doesn't lead to being high conviction. And then to the first part of the question, I think that's where, it's not about being stubborn for the sake of stubborn and you're always right and everyone else is always wrong. And so I think it's more about staying open-minded. Like, is this something where I should have high conviction because I'm right and a bunch of other people are wrong? Or is this an area where, most other people are right because they've seen this and I'm not going to have high conviction. So I'm going to move on to a different play. So I think it's more about like staying open-minded and not letting your ego get the best of you and you're always right and they're always wrong, because that's never the case. And also not letting fear get the best of you, because what if could always go wrong. And so that's always a factor. And so it's really that kind of like balanced perspective. And then I think depending on what the question, the decision, the choice that you're debating is when you should think about like, who are the people that you would really trust to help you with that decision. And it doesn't mean that person you trust is who you would turn to for every issue, but there are certain people that I do trust implicitly and I would turn to, and their advice and feedback are going to matter a ton. And I'm fortunate that I get to work with some of those people, and that's great. And I also get to live with them. Some are family, and it's just kind of taking it all in. I am definitely someone who likes to hear a bunch of different perspectives in order to then form my own view. And rarely do I start like in the high conviction spot. I usually get there after I talk to a bunch of people and have inputs from a bunch of different sources, and then decide like, is this something I should have high conviction on or not? And if I do, it would be very hard to dissuade me.
Yeah, I love that, high conviction. And absolutely, you and I actually share, there's an individual in my life, in your life, it's the reason that I met you. And he's someone that I turn to for advice. And, he's one of those small group of people that when he says, maybe you should think about this a different way, like I listen and I'm like, okay, yeah, you're probably right. So I love that. And I love this idea of, having that high conviction after you've kind of gauged from that trusted group of people. It's a, and that kind of, I think, gives you and empowers you to say, okay, this is the right way to move forward. Even if you have the naysayers that may have high profiles out there, knocking you down, that at the end of the day, you have a trusted group of people that know you, know your value, know your vision, and believe in what you're putting forward. And I'd like to know a little bit of how that plays out in your personal life. You have close to 600 employees. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you're running this business. You've just gone public. How do you balance work and your home life? And what are the decisions that you make to make sure that you find that balance?
Yeah, I'm probably not very good at the balance. I work a lot. I like work. I get to work with great people, and so it's enjoyable most of the time. That said, one of the silver linings of the pandemic has been being home a lot more, and we have an 18-month-old son who, I get to hang out with every day. And so I do think one of the lasting impacts of the pandemic are that people are going to have a different perspective on kind of the work-life balance. And I definitely don't think or want, the amount of work travel that I had before to ever come back. And I think people are going to definitely think about prioritizing their schedules and being home more. And I think we see how functional life can be on Zoom, and that, flying across the country for a lunch or a dinner meeting is not necessary or practical. And the balance that we get to strike is spending more time with family and having more meals at home, et cetera, and love that. So, that said, I work a lot. I'm generally always connected and responsive. And I think that's important for how I work and for the team around me. But I enjoy work most of the time, and also now I'm enjoying more time at home than ever before. So it's a nice silver lining, and I think I'll be working from home, kind of permanently going forward, more so than I ever did before, which was basically never. And so it's again, just always reinventing the way that things can be better. And I think the kind of work-life balance is a great question, something we should all think about as offices do reopen and some parts of life go back to normal, but doesn't mean everything has to go back to the way it was before.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy to think, just like you, I had insane travel pre-COVID. And I think now back to some of the things where right now, you could say like, hey, let's just jump on a Zoom call for that. But before the pandemic, it was like, well, I've got to be in front of this person.
Right.
Like this is a must do. And if it's me flying to the West Coast for 24 hours, I'm doing it,
right.
And it didn't even register to me that was just crazy. And it wasn't at the time.
Right.
I do think that we have found, we're going to find this balance as a country, frankly, for how we can operate and I don't think it's going to go back to the way it was, at least not in the near term future. I think it is going to be a little bit of a change and a shift in how we operate, just in terms of working. And, I think the working from home also brings its own unique set of challenges. I have, I like when my kids will run up to me and I'm on a Zoom call and I'm like, oh, I'm working, and they can't break through that difference. If I'm at home, and they need me, they don't understand that, like, no, I'm working. So, but yeah, I'm liking the home time too. It's been, I think something that we've all been able to settle down and, take a step back and realize the importance of, that home life balance.
Totally.
I saw a funny thing though. The other day I saw a meme and it was one of those things because, and I actually laughed about it because it was talked about, when you said that you were going to if I had 6 months off, or if I had some time off, I would get all these things done. And it's like, surprise, you all got that time off. What'd you get done?
Right. Nothing.
So, all right. Well, let's wrap this up with my final and most important question that I ask to all of our guests. And that is, in all of this, in this crazy journey that you've been on, since before graduating the University of Texas, Austin, you've certainly and no doubt have developed your own sense of resiliency. You know, I mean, to take on these new challenges, you have to be able to be resilient, to bounce back, to the naysayers, to those that say that your idea, your product isn't going to work. And tell me, what does living a resilient life look like for you?
It's a great question. To me, living a resilient life means that you can never be complacent, because life changes around you and you have to be adaptable to that change. And so I think it's something where you have to get comfortable in a state of constant change and constant reinvention and adaptation to what's going on, because the world doesn't sit still, life doesn't sit still, things are going to change. And so to me, the key to being resilient is embracing that change and being ready for whatever life throws at you.
I love that. Embracing the change and being ready for what life throws at you. And certainly life will throw at us its share of challenges. Nobody is void of that. But I loved this conversation. I loved learning more about, you know, your rise to where you are now. And I encourage everyone, this is my own, you know, personal perspective. I've been sleeping on a Casper mattress for, I'm going to say, gosh, I think I may have been one of your early customers. It's been probably about 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah.
And I love it. We actually, in true fashion to your statement that the business has been doing pretty well during the pandemic, we ordered 2 Casper mattresses during the kids. And so I encourage everyone to check out Casper. And we didn't talk about it too much, but Casper is not just a mattress company. It is a sleep company. They have some awesome products on there outside of just the mattress. Everything from dog beds to infusers to awesome pillows, sheets, blankets, and everything else under the sun to give you an incredible night of sleep. So check it out. And Philip, thank you so much for coming on the Resilient Life podcast. It's been awesome to hear your story.
Thank you so much. It's super fun. Thank you very much, Brian.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Resilient Life podcast. What an awesome time today talking to Philip Krim, talking to him about his entrepreneurial spirit, where that's led him. And frankly, the biggest thing I took away from everything he said was to have a bias towards action. And I think whether you're in the business world, both personally and professionally, we can all have a bias towards action to move forward in our lives. Once again, thank you for joining us. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and share the Resilient Life podcast.